The rain hammered against the windshield, a relentless cadence that mirrored my fraying nerves. My GPS insisted this fog-choked back road was the fastest way to Black Hollow, but as the skeletal trees closed in and the headlights barely pierced the dark, I began to doubt its wisdom. The high-stakes client meeting I was rushing to could make or break my career, yet the road stretched endlessly into the void. The clock on the dashboard read 10:47 p.m., and the fog grew so thick it seemed to swallow the light. I gripped the wheel tighter, a creeping unease stirring at the edges of my thoughts. A faint sound broke the silence, a low hum like distant static that seemed to rise from the bones of the car. Turning off the radio did nothing to stop it. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, even with the heater running full blast. That's when I saw them. Two figures stood motionless at the edge of the road, emerging from the mist like phantoms. The man was tall and angular, his face hidden beneath the brim of a wide-brimmed hat. The woman beside him clutched a threadbare shawl, her gaunt frame swaying slightly in the rain. Neither moved as my car approached. My headlights illuminated their faces, pale, lifeless, and unnervingly blank. Their eyes locked onto mine as I passed, unblinking and glassy, as though they could see straight through me. For a brief moment, I thought of stopping to help, but the unnatural stillness of their bodies froze the thought in my mind. I pressed harder on the gas, desperate to leave them behind. Minutes later, the faint outline of Black Hollow emerged from the fog. The town was wrong. Its cobblestone streets glistened wet under flickering streetlights, and the buildings sagged against one another like rotting corpses. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't align with the figures casting them. The people were worse. A hunched man shuffled past, pushing an empty wheelbarrow. His lips moved rapidly in silent conversation with himself. Across the street, a woman in a torn dress stood beneath a flickering lamp, clutching the limp body of a headless bird. Her head cocked unnaturally to one side, her lifeless eyes following my car. Further along, a group of children stood huddled beneath a massive oak tree. They weren't playing or talking. They stood perfectly still, staring at something on the ground. As I drove past, one of them looked up. Her eyes were pure black, and her smile revealed jagged, oversized teeth. I slammed my foot on the gas, my car lurching forward. Shadows twisted along the walls of the buildings as I passed. A shop with shattered windows came into view, and inside, a figure crawled across the floor, clawing at shards of glass with jerky, unnatural movements. At the edge of town, where the road curved toward a looming silhouette, a woman stood alone. She was dressed in a tattered wedding gown, its hem soaked in mud. Her face was hidden by a veil, but as I passed, she raised a skeletal arm, pointing directly at the hotel in the distance. The hotel rose from the fog like a sentinel, its stone facade streaked with age and tangled with ivy. A rusted wrought iron sign creaked in the wind. The Stillwater Manor. I parked and stepped out, the cold night air biting against my skin. The silence was oppressive, as though the world had stopped breathing. I hesitated for a moment before approaching the heavy oak doors, which groaned as they swung open. The lobby was a decayed relic of faded grandeur. Dust-covered chandeliers cast fractured light onto cracked marble floors, and a crimson carpet stretched to a towering oak desk. Behind it stood a man who looked as though he'd been carved from wax. His pale skin stretched over sharp cheekbones, and his gray eyes were lifeless and unwavering. He spoke in a monotone voice, as if rehearsed.
"Welcome to the Stillwater Manor."
"I need a room for the night," I said, my voice shaking slightly under his unsettling gaze.
"We have one room available,"
he replied, sliding a tarnished brass key across the desk.
"Room 329.
As I reached for the key, his hand lingered. His lips twitched into a faint, humorless smile.
"Enjoy your stay,"
he murmured, his words heavy with hidden meaning. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. "Is there something wrong with the room?" I asked. His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes.
"The room chooses its guests,"
he said softly.
"Sometimes it warns. Sometimes it claims."
The spiraling staircase creaked under my weight as I ascended. The air grew colder with each step, and by the time I reached the third floor, my breath misted in the dim light. The hallway stretched before me, its peeling wallpaper and flickering sconces casting unnerving shadows. Room 329 stood at the end, its door slightly ajar, a faint light spilling onto the floor. Pinned to the wood was a photograph yellowed with age. My stomach dropped. It was the couple from the roadside standing in front of the hotel. Their faces were the same, blank, lifeless, and deeply unsettling. Turning the photograph over, I found a message scrawled in jagged ink. They never left. My hands trembled as I pushed the door open. The room was suffocating. A four-poster bed loomed in the center, its moth-eaten curtains swaying faintly despite the still air. An antique desk stood beneath a tarnished mirror, and the metallic tang of blood lingered in the room. On the desk lay a leather-bound journal. Its pages were filled with mundane notes from travelers, until the final entry chilled me to the core. December 12th, 1954. Room 329 is not empty. It never is. A faint ripple in the mirror caught my eye. Its surface shimmered like water, and a shadow darted across it, too fast to be mine. The air shifted behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the shadows within it twisted, deepened, and writhed as though alive. A slow, deliberate knock shattered the silence. I opened the door cautiously, but the hallway was empty. Another photograph lay on the floor. The couple was now inside room 329, standing behind the four-poster bed. Their glassy eyes stared directly into the camera. The whispers began then, low, guttural, and impossibly close. The mirror began to hum, its surface warping as dark shapes clawed from within. "Stay!" a voice rasped, dripping with malice. Panic consumed me. Grabbing the oil lamp from the nightstand, I hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered, and the whispers ceased. I fled down the staircase, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The receptionist was waiting at the desk, his expression grim.
You saw them.
He said flatly. "Who are they?" I demanded.
The Stillwaters,
He replied.
the original owners, betrayed, murdered, and bound to that room.
"Why did you give it to me?" He smiled faintly.
The room chooses, sometimes to warn, sometimes to claim.
I didn't wait for more. I bolted to my car and drove until Black Hollow was a distant nightmare in my rearview mirror. Even now, in the quiet of my own home, I feel their presence. In the shadows of my bedroom, in the corners of my mind, they wait. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the whispers, beckoning me back to room 329.